Welcome to the World Football Summit podcast, the show for football industry leaders who want to stay ahead of the game. We bring you the latest insights, trends, and stories from the experts driving innovation and progress in sports business worldwide. Join us as we dive deep into the ideas and initiatives transforming the world of football. From sustainability and innovation to player development, fan engagement, and everything in between. Our goal is to unite the global football industry and drive positive change and progress. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I'm your host, Jaime, Director of Content and Communications at World Football Summit. Today, we're going deep into the football industry. And we're not just talking about what happens on the pitch, despite the fact that yesterday was the announcement that Rodri has just won the Ballon d'Or. And you can imagine the conversations, the discussions that are happening around the office today. They're getting fun, but if you hear a little bit of background noise, just excuse the people here. You know, it's fostering good debate. Anyway, but again, we're not talking about what's happening on the pitch. We're looking at what happens off it, right? We're looking at the business of football, how it's evolving, what's changing, and of course, what does it mean for someone like you on the other side listening? No? I've just been spending a lot of time looking at the different panels from World Football Summit Europe in Sevilla, which took place a few months ago, and also looking at interviews and listening to what leaders like Giorgio Chiellini said, you know, and there's one thing that's for sure. Change is a constant in the soccer industry or football industry, however you want to call it, no? And that's something that we're going to be discussing today. But challenges are good. It brings new opportunities. It brings new avenues to explore and then to drive growth. So today we're just going to break it all down, we're going to see if we can unpack the main lessons from panels at World Football Summit Europe, which in fact you can actually download a special report we created with the main lessons from different topics. You can find it on our website, worldfootballsummit.com. Again, that's www.worldfootballsummit.com. And you can find, lessons, leadership in football, women's football, fan engagement, technology, of course. I mean, you name it. So make sure you head over there after you listen to this episode and you download it. And of course, subscribe, follow podcast, share it with your industry colleagues. Subscribe to our newsletter as well. And remember, World Football Summit Asia is just around the corner. It's taking place on December 2nd and 3rd in Riyadh. And it's going to be a very interesting event. And I would suggest you don't miss that as well. You can check out any options to participate or to join us, buy your ticket on our website. But, let's get into the topic of the conversation for today. And one of the things that's really fascinating is that, the changes that we're actually seeing in the industry, they're totally connected. This is not a one-off or standalone thing. If you think about it, stadiums are evolving. But as we've said it, in the past, the stadium revenue is actually what's driving the other pillars of the sport business model. So when you have a packed stadium, you obviously get more interest from sponsors because they assume that fans are interested and engaged, and also from broadcasters because they assume that the product on the pitch is appealing. So again. Going back to that, there's also a very interesting rise in terms of the direct-to-consumer proposition. How that's going to help the business model evolve? Of course, AI. What's happening there? It's a whole explosion. So all of these, they're actually interconnected, as we said. And they're actually creating a ripple effect across the entire industry. So if we go into the fan experience realm, everybody knows it's not the same. It's not what it used to be. Back in the day, fan engagement was just about having people watch the 90 minutes of game, right? Today, that's not the case. Today, you can actually, a lot of people argue that interest in football is not what it used to be. I would argue it's on the contrary. The thing is, it's a much more diversified offering, in terms of, you can watch football on documentaries, social media, of course, your live games, highlights, you have your fantasy games, you have your video games. Again, it's just so many different avenues to consume football that it's just what's happening is that the fan is more distracted. Maybe they're as passionate, but they're a little bit distracted, so that's different. But that obviously is football property drives you to actually change how you're actually distributing your product, which is football, no? And not only that, Fans today, they want personalized content. They want personalized experience. So they want to be more immersive. They want to be as close to the action as possible, you know? So it's just not about the match in itself anymore. It's just that, you know, how do you get that content to be relevant and also top of mind? That's what football clubs need to be. You know, we talked about this with Mike Armstrong, CMO at Juventus, you know, not too long ago on the podcast. Check that episode as well. And he was saying that, you know, for him, the role is to make Juventus be a relevant brand, and that's always out there because the amount of entertainment options available are just massive. So if he's always on the top of mind, people can always come back to, you know, think about Juventus when they want to see, want to consume either football or other forms of entertainment, you know? And then this obviously, Juventus is a great example of innovative ways where, you know, clubs are evolving, you know? And the thing is, you see clubs experimenting with cool stuff, just like Juventus is doing. You know, for example, they've actually partnered with the our friends from the Freestyle Football Association. You know, and but also there's a lot of technology coming into play with augmented reality. I don't know if you saw, for example, that viral football video of Manchester United Stadium. You know, where people are on the stands and they actually scenes. They're kind of like watching the game live from the stadium. You know, so this was shared by I think it was Colin Coward. I want to get credit to where credit is due from Volume Sports, you know? And so again, it was kind of like being in an IMAX giant screen, just watching the game. And it was as if you were part of the action. So it makes you wonder, is that going to be the future, especially in an era where clubs, they understand they need to engage the international fan because that's where the opportunity is, right? And so how can you make the international fan feel as if they were part of the experience? You know, that's kind of like, again, speaking of the stadiums, they're not just for football matches anymore. We're seeing it all over the place, you know. So you have these football clubs. They're trying to make use of the asset that's a stadium as many days as possible in the year. So you have your concerts, you have your conferences, you name it. Anything that can happen in a stadium, clubs are going to try to do because it kind of like justifies the use of that asset. But also, if you think about it, it probably drives naming rights deals because it's not the same to go to a potential sponsor and tell them, hey, you know, I have an asset here that people are going to have exposure once every 2 weeks versus no, this is going to be a full calendar of events the entire year. And your brand is going to be associated to that, not only on the stadium itself, but in all the promotional materials. Even if it's a ticket to a concert, you know, you see the branding, you know. So that's kind of like, you know, the development there. And, you know, you see also ambitious projects like the ones that they're doing in Saudi, you know, with the King Salman International Stadium in Riyadh, you know, and that's going to be just amazing to see. I mean, I know we're still 10 years away, but think about it, just the ambition and the vision, you kind of like expect or you kind of look forward to what's going to happen there, you know? And so obviously it's going to be, it makes you wonder how they're going to take that entertainment piece to the next level, you know? And for the Saudis, just think, you know, it's concerts, it's esports, where you know the discipline there is huge. You have your community events. I mean, just think about the possibilities. Again, anything that kind of like justifies using the stadium for high traffic or whatever you want to call it, you know, for any type of event. And of course, this is going to be a challenge in terms of planning because you need a different set of skills just to have, you know, event planners and operations, you know. So in terms of a logistics point of view, it's a very different, let's say, operation to switch from a football match to a concert or to even if an American football match or a tennis match. You know, it's so much different, and you just need to do it in very few hours. You know, and sometimes you see examples in the United States that are master of this. You know, where you see clubs or teams playing in a basketball game, and then a few hours later you see it convert into a hockey rink. You know, as hockey rinks. So that's just it always amazes me. You know, but again, in terms of the skills and the coordination required, that's going to take clubs to another level, you know. But hey, it opens up new revenue streams for clubs, doesn't it? So, and that's what we're all about here. You know, trying to find new avenues of growth. And again, it's not just only in terms of you know, sponsorship or ticket matches. It's also trying to see, you know, branded experiences and, you know, even try to drive businesses for local organizations. Hospitality plays a big role here. So again, it just opens up new, different possibilities in terms of revenue and partnership with brands, which I think is what the industry needs. And we're not talking about. I mean, one of the things that I think we need to highlight here is don't assume when you talk about football that this is only for men's football. Let's say there's a big conversation going on right now where probably women's football or women's football teams need their own stadiums, and they need different type of stadiums. And that's something that you're actually seeing in the United States. For the Kansas City Current, for example, is a good example there. How they're demonstrating that having a specific women's football stadium is driving a lot of revenue because, you see it again, going back to what I mentioned at the beginning, it's, we're seeing it in terms of having it packed, let's say, each weekend, and that kind of like drives more interest and more revenue. So look out for that because I think that's gonna be another thing to watch out for. And again, as we said, this is tying a little bit to other things that are going on in the industry, which is everything that's related to direct to consumer. Now, this was a huge talking point during our World Football Summit, and it makes sense. It's something that clubs are understanding that the amount of data that they can actually get access to is huge from the fans, but they're not exploiting it enough. They're not converting into opportunity. So the the potential is there, and you kind of like see the how do we call it? Yeah, maybe that's the word. No, it's potential for clubs to actually try to offer B2C. But again, as we were saying before, this requires a new set of challenges, new set of skills, resources. At the end of the day, it deserves commitment. So yes, it's very nice to say, "Oh, I'm going to go to my direct consumer proposition," but are you committed to allocate resources and time and patience to actually see that come to work? Because it's not like turning on a switch. This is something that you need to implement for years and just actually bet on it for years to come. But and it kind of like there's a tricky balance there because if you go to the D2C route in terms of streaming, for example, and you build your own, let's say, streaming proposition, you're sacrificing your broadcasting revenue, which is on the short term is providing, good cash to your club. So who's going to be the one sacrificing that short term influx of money in order to build an expensive proposition that you need to invest now, and another thing here to understand is that you can build your D2C proposition, but then you also need to feed it content regularly. It's not just a matter of having it every once in a while. So you really need to think and be very strategic about the type of content and the amount of content and how you're going to feed. So for example, that's one of the challenges that FIFA was facing, with their FIFA Plus. How are you going to feed relevant content that's interesting to the fan and not just any type of content. And again, that makes, obviously FIFA, they're an endless bank of content, but are clubs in a similar position, especially if you go to, let's say, quote unquote, more humble clubs? That's something worth thinking about. I don't know. I just think that it's an interesting conversation, but it's not as easy as it seems. And here I would say, you also have the role of social media platforms and hey, we talked about this with Peter Bellamy in the podcast as well. It doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be that you go D2C and you forget your broadcasting. Probably what you can try to do is have your broadcasting attack your top of the funnel. And then your D2C proposition, it's kind of like where you engage with the fan, you convert with the fans, and you kind of like, you have your complementary there, no? Obviously, the advantages for clubs are huge because, it gives the clubs control over the brand, the messages, the revenue streams. But again, from skills perspective, marketing perspective, it's a very hard challenge. And here is one of the things that is not being talked about too much, and this I heard from Richard Gillis at the Unofficial Partner podcast is, where's YouTube role into this? Because it seems that it's kind of like not the underdog because YouTube is not an underdog, but it's kind of like an option that people are not taking seriously. And you probably think about it, and YouTube makes all the sense in the world because they have the distribution, they have the skills, they have the technology. Why aren't clubs partnering so much with YouTube? I think, for example, what the women's soccer league or the women's football league in the United Kingdom did was very interesting because they partner with YouTube. They're getting accessibility, but they're also, let's say, they're not having to invest and commit to that. They can rely on someone like YouTube who's going to deliver on that front, and they can just focus on making the product on the pitch much better. So again, is that something that we're going to see? I think YouTube has the potential to actually become a key player in the streaming space in the near future. Maybe not just in the short term, but definitely they're putting the groundwork to test and become a dominant player. So you have fans wanting more. You have stadiums becoming more than just places where people go see football matches, and then you see this conversation about the direct to consumer. So that's a lot of changes. But of course, we haven't even gotten to the AI piece of it yet, and that's one of the elements that's kind of changing the industry most. And I know it's a buzzword and all of that, but if you just think about it, look at the ways it's just changing the industry. And one thing that was clear during the panels at World Football Summit is that artificial intelligence is not going to replace jobs. All right, probably it's going to make those jobs better. And I think what's going to happen is the talent and the skills. They're going to help professionals become even better. Think about it. The sports industry, in terms of professional, probably is not that big. I always get amazed at the amount of people that actually work in clubs because it's not too much. But if you have some, technology with artificial intelligence and your co-pilot, and you have effectively a technology assistant, you can get more efficient, you can get even better. And this is not just about creating content. There's so many things that you can do. It's data analytics, it's creating strategies and just bouncing off ideas to create better strategies. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and of course, when you go into the performance side, just being able to track, or even predict when players can become injured or when they perform better, what are the conditions in terms of, if it's raining, if it's not raining, if they're playing against a certain player, if it's a certain minute of the game. I mean, all of that's, putting into, into that mix and just what's going to, I mean, at the end of the day, what I think is going to happen is that ultimately all these folks are going to get access to that technology, and it's actually going to be the human factor that's going to be the differentiator. So someone coming in, understanding the data, and really not only just understanding, but I think this is the key thing: asking the correct questions that need to be asked. That's what's going to help clubs be different. Because if you ask the correct question, and I once heard a quote that I always keep in mind, which is the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. I think that's kind of where it comes into play here. The result that you're going to get from analyzing the data is depending on the level of or the quality of the questions that you're able to ask from it, and that's going to be what the difference maker. But again, it's also going to impact player recruitment. So you, for example, had that Panama Calcio, they actually won an award at World Football Summit just to analyze players and see and just look at how they're using data to actually drive their transfer strategy is just amazing, and it was actually crucial for them to come back to Serie A, a legendary club like Panama. So again, data is nice, but you really need someone or people who understand the data. And not only that, but are actually able to help the rest of the organization understand that data and take action on that data. So again, that's a human element of it. So AI is not going to take jobs away. It's just going to probably help us, and become more efficient. So I think I'm just trying to think of another topic here. And of course, I don't know why, but it just comes back to a key pillar that we're discussing on the podcast, which is sustainability. And this is just not a trend anymore. It's not a nice word. It's not a nice to have. I think for clubs, it's become a must have. It's embedded in the strategy of a lot of clubs, and you see clubs like Liverpool, like Real Betis, they have it ingrained into their strategy. And not only that, I mean, it's not just because it's the right thing to do, which it is, but it's also because it drives business results. So I think it's a whole new approach. But think about this, and this was a data that was shared during one of the panels, which is 80% of fans actually want their clubs to be environmentally responsible. Think about it, 80% of fans. So if you're not keeping your fans happy, you're not in good business. So again, this is not only the right thing to do, it's the business intelligent thing to do, if you want to call it like that. So I think, especially when you look at, when there's a huge conversation going on with how can clubs engage with the younger fan and all of that, well, this is one big element. Because the younger generations, they want, they want responsible organizations to follow. They want to resonate with those type of organizations that are actually helping drive positive change. So again, it's not only, it has to be part of the strategy because it is going to drive business growth. Okay. So again, it requires investment, and most of all, it requires commitment. And I think when we going back to what we were discussing with the DTC, it's a commitment issue. Okay. You don't just put the buzzword in there just because it looks nice. You really have to commit to it. And then you really need to have the skills or the talent inside to say, hey, from a marketing perspective, how do we embed this messaging into what we're putting out there, how we're connecting with fans to sustainability, and again, how can you bring in brands and partners that are aligned to those values? I think another key word here is alignment. Once you adopt a strategy within a club, how can you engage partners and fans to be part of it? and drive growth. And speaking of growth, of course, women's football. I think the World Football Summit. Uh, there was a lot of conversation around the not only it's not a potential anymore, it's just that the reality of women's football within the industry. And I think I think it was I think it was Maggie Murphy who said it a couple of years ago. No, it was Andrea Ekblad when she was working at the Zone, and she said something like, the momentum is now unstoppable, and of course, we're seeing that momentum keep on building, keep on building, keep on building, in clubs and brands. They're getting into the space, and as we mentioned with Emily Heath from Rexona, in a previous episode, brands bring awareness, they bring investment, but they also bring ambition to the women's game, which is, I think, it's needed, to help it grow even further. We need more record breaking initiatives. We need more media coverage, and just we need more. We need the ecosystem to grow. There's a lot to be done. Of course, this is not to say that we cannot celebrate the growth and what's been achieved so far, but I think we're all looking at it and say, come on, there's still so much more to do. And we hope it really does get there, and at World Football Summit try to encourage that. And, we'll have some cool updates on that that I cannot talk about just yet. But hopefully when this goes out, the news will probably be out already. But anyway, let me know, I digress. Um, so, this also leads to a conversation about, having a diverse leadership positions. And again, this is not just the right thing to do, which it is. It's smart business. We've said in the past, diversity leads to wisdom. And we need a more diverse leadership representation. We need more women in leadership roles that are actually driving impact, not just for the sake of numbers and having X number of women on the board. No, because, we need that diversity to actually help the industry grow, so I think, in terms of revenue, in terms of brand building, in terms of leadership, women's football is in a unique position in the world to actually become, a major force. Let's just keep it at that, But again, I think we can also say that one of the key things, or one of the interesting things, we mentioned it before, was, everything related to broadcasting with women's football. You need to drive accessibility. You need people to actually see the game, and you cannot put paywalls in there, because if you do, you're not going to get as many fans. And that was another interesting conversation during World War II, which is, everything related to broadcasting. Because the thing is, the broadcasting pillar of the sport business model seems to be plateauing. It's not that it's declining so much. It's just that, it's not growing, and it's been growing for the past several years, So this is actually forcing clubs to adopt new approaches to its sport business model. Again, it's not about creating these massive long-term deals. It's not like that anymore, Again, if you bring in the D2C conversation into play, you're seeing that there's these deals are becoming more complex, and they're becoming either, there's more clauses into it, short term, and I think you see it when, for example, Lega Serie A, the Premier League, Ligue 1 in France. I mean, all of these major properties, they're seeing either the values of their broadcasting rates go down, or they're not just seeing it rise to what you would believe they would rise, So again, this is crucial to understand. And for anybody really just working in the space, I mean, it's something to keep an eye on. And again, I think what is also driving here is an interesting play in terms of content creation, because I think if you're someone that's comfortable in creating content in digital, whether it's podcasting or it's videos or written word, whatever, I think that's actually a huge way. I think clubs are actually understanding that that's another D2C element that they can actually leverage, or they can a lever that they can pull. Sorry, because they need to connect more with fans, and they need to explore these different touch points with fans. So I think if you're knowledgeable on these, let's say, pillars, you're probably going to get a lot of, conversations going on that are going to be interesting, And one of the key things to create successful content is storytelling, and that's for sure. I think, and when you think about it, football is this, we've said in the past, it's this unique source of memories, of emotions that only, that only sport can generate, and only football can create. If you're able to really tap into that and create stories, and again, we've said it, you're going to connect with fans much more. They're going to resonate with your values, and that's going to create engagement. And again, once you create that engagement, that ultimately leads to revenue. So it's a loads of opportunity for creative people out there who are looking to create content. But again, it goes back to being committed to allocating resources and it's not just, oh, I'm going to create a podcast and do 2 episodes. No, you have to be there for long term. Um, and that kind of brings us to some other skills that I think people should have. So if you're a professional in the industry, it's not just about being able to create good content, but you also need to have good skills. You need to be you know you need to be able to tell that story when you're analyzing data. It's not just to connect with fans, but also to connect with internal shareholders. So just think about how you're able to create with whatever you're doing with your job. How you can create a story that you're going to be able to tell people around. And another soft skills. It's not only about communications, is empathy. And I think in a world where everything is complex, we're all saturated with content. There's so many stuff going on. Just being able to be show empathy and really help your people grow. That's kind of what it's all about. People grow, become better. Isn't that what football is all about? So take that to your leadership position. And obviously, talking about leadership, one of the great themes of the event was female leadership in football. And again, we alluded to it before. We need more women in leadership positions because diversity leads to wisdom, and there's some amazing women out there just doing fantastic work. So let's just give them the visibility they deserve, just to see how their impact can actually help transform and drive the industry forward. You know it all comes back to also being able to collaborate. I mean, in a world with so much technology and so much complexity, just being able to, collaborate with one another and then work with each other, that's going to be a big difference maker, if you will, right? So I think finally resilience. I think in the sports industry, you really need to be, willing to work hard, to really grind it out, and really face setbacks because they will come. It's an industry that's going through a lot of change today. But hey, if you think about it, being able to have that in you, to have that grit is going to also help you build a character and a set of skills that are going to probably put you in a advantageous position in the future. You know, so I think let me see. I'm just looking at my notes here of some other stuff that I wanted to share with you today. Obviously, if we go back to things that are going on in the industry, um, look at what's going on in esports. I think that's going to make a comeback somehow. Web3 is also going to be an interesting thing to watch out, especially if towards 2025, everything related to digital experiences. Just yesterday, I was reading in the Sporting Crypto newsletter everything about the MLS Quest. I'm not saying it would work or it won't work, but just seeing so many sports organizations going back to that and launching it just makes you wonder, what's there. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on, and going back to the esports thing, I think that's a new way to connect with fans, to generate new audiences, to widen the funnel, if you will. So and just all the investment that's being made, especially in Saudi, usually with the Esports World Cup, it just makes you again wonder how is this going to fit. I think we're very early. I think we all want to get the answers, but I think we just have to see it develop. That's going to create new revenue opportunities, new partnership opportunities that haven't been explored. Obviously, we go back to the AI thing and the data analysis thing. So I think I just want to say that don't get discouraged. I know it's a lot of stuff going on. I know there's a lot of things happening, but hey, it's a great time. These times of uncertainty are kind of like the best, and where you see the best opportunities come up. So I would just encourage you to keep reading, keep learning, keep talking with people in the industry. Not just because of World Football Summit, but I would urge you to connect with leaders at World Football Summit events or other events, because those conversations are actually what's going to tap new ideas. They're going to bring conversations and who knows, opportunities that right now you might not be seeing, but you never know. So again, I would just encourage you to check, those type of initiatives out in terms of events. And and just think that the future is going to rely on innovation, on creativity, and it's not going to look anything like what we see today. So just let's go out, let's just play the game, and just let's see. Hopefully we can come back in a few weeks time after World Football Summit Asia. I can bring you um, another of these episodes where I summarize the main lessons from what we've seen in the panels. But on that note, I do want to tell you again, if you have any feedback on these type of episodes, it would be very, very helpful if you share with us, if you reach out on social media, and you share with your colleagues in the industry as well. Subscribe, rate the podcast on your platform of choice. You will not imagine how much that helps. And hey, if this interested you today, make sure you download the report. It's on worldfootballsummit.com. Again, that's www.worldfootballsummit.com. And looking forward to hearing from you. And yeah, let's rise to the challenge. Let's stay curious. Let's stay flexible. We're going to need to change. Who knows what's going to be, the role of the future for us sport business professionals. But let's all work together to build a football industry that we're proud of. That's innovative, that's sustainable, and that's inclusive. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Nothing else from my side. I hope to see you next time, and have a great rest of your day. And hopefully, we'll see you back on the World Football Summit podcast soon. Bye.